Hey, welcome back to the ACE Football Academy. I'm Coach Dunham, joined alongside Coach Hamilton. Today, we are getting a little specific about your player and knowing their role on their team. We know we all want our kids to get playing time. They want to play their favorite position. Everybody wants to be the goal scorer.
Yeah.
But we need to understand that that's just not reality, especially as you get older. There will be roles that you will need to play on your team. And it's important to understand that all players, every single one of them, bring value to that team. It's can you accept your role, even if it's not as a starter, maybe as a sub, maybe even as a bench player? And we're going to dig into a lot of that in this episode. We're going to talk about knowing your role and how to handle those situations throughout the season or multiple seasons throughout your career. Coach, we deal with this a lot, especially in high school. We deal with this within our club, more so when we get to the middle school, high school ages where, playing time isn't as fair, if you want to say it that way. You're getting more specific. You know who your starters are, who your subs are. And be frank, sometimes the players on the bottom aren't going to get the kind of playing time they'd like to get. And we're going to discuss on how to, handle those situations, Coach.
So I want to piggyback on your intro there, which was beautiful, by the way.
You're very complimentary tonight.
But yeah, that's what I've been told. It is this conversation. We're probably going to touch on playing time here and there, but that's not what this conversation is about, right? This is about players, parents, coaches, kind of already knowing what playing time looks like for you as a player. So part of that conversation is going to be how we handle that. But as you kind of mentioned, this conversation is going to start leaning towards more of those teams where we get into, winning matters now, right? We're getting away from that. Okay, well, Sarah's played 10 minutes, so now Kelly needs to play 10 minutes, and now Elizabeth needs to play 10 minutes.
Time to put away the stopwatch.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I know, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so I guess you didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to kind of really put you on the spot here.
Let's go, man.
What age group are we talking to? Like, when do you flip that switch? And I shouldn't put it like that because I do think I do think there is some progression, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But when does that season hit when, as a head coach, you have to be very honest with everybody involved that, okay, kind of what you said. Playing time is no longer fair. Fair is not equal. Equal is not fair. My job is to get results. Right? Do I want to develop your player? Do I want to make sure your player has a great experience? Of course we do, right? That's what most coaches are in it for. But there does come a time where, especially on the school side of things where we're coaching for our jobs, right? We have to get results. Absolutely. So when does that threshold hit for you?
I think that's a multiple point question here. So number one, for me, as soon as you leave academy, the fairness of playing time.
Oh, wow. Okay. I love this.
That's where the clock starts. Now, you and I have discussed this many times. You're still developing as your number one priority coming out of academy.
Right.
They're still young. They're still learning. And I'm not saying you just stop playing everybody somewhat equally, but the winning starts to matter.
Yeah.
For the players at this point in time. And I think it's important to understand that once you leave academy, your talent starts to matter a little bit more. Where are you developing? Are you not developing? Are you coming to every practice? Mm-hmm. And I think that's just as important. And so I think that comes into play as far as knowing your role. But I think more specifically, once you get into junior high school, I'm going to be here in our area. It starts in 6th grade, but I think 7th and 8th grade is really when they can comprehend on their own. It's not mom telling them something, dad telling them something, coach doesn't like you, or coach doesn't value you. They can understand at that age, all right, I'm definitely not at Becky's talent, but I'm equal to Heather.
Yeah.
And now you can start deciphering, okay, I may not be a starter, but I'm a substitute and I have value and I need to understand where that comes into play. So I think this conversation is very specific to seventh grade and up, to where I think biologically they understand what coach is explaining, they understand where mom and dad are coming from, but in their own reality, they go to practice and they see the separation of talent that's going on the field.
Yeah, that's my answer as well. I'm probably even gonna back it up a year. I'm just gonna say sixth grade. I'm gonna say middle school, right? Because again, in our area, middle school coaches are hard to come by, right? And
Oh yeah.
honestly, in our area, we've done a pretty good job of finding middle school coaches who aren't just volunteer dads or volunteer moms. They are people who kind of know the game. So we are lucky in that aspect. But for me, I kind of look at it as, and maybe this is selfish as me as a coach, but truly in that once you hit that middle school age group, that's when for me that switch happens, especially at the middle school, especially when we're talking on the school side of things, where coaches could quote unquote be fired for not producing results, right? And so I think that's where that switch flips. So I love, but so I think we're on the same page in that where okay, that middle school age is when okay these roles start to come into play, and as a coach, you have to start defining them, and that's what we're going to try and do tonight. And as a player, you have to start accepting them.
I think the other side of this is depending on the size of your club. If you've got an A, B, and a C
Oh
type of
yeah,
squad,
yes,
you're talking about very different ways of viewing your role on these teams. If you're on the bottom level team,
yes,
really everybody's developing to get up.
yes,
But if you're on that A level team, you're you're expected to be
yeah,
winning games.
no,
You're
100%.
supposed to be the best of the best in that club. You're supposed to be the top talent within that club. It's why you're on the A team. And you're competing not just for positions, you're competing for playing time. So
Yep.
understanding what team you're on within your club is also
What a
something
great point.
to keep in perspective when you're understanding your role on the team. So, Coach, I'm going to dig into what we're looking at here. One thing that we want to start out with is your role as the starter and having either a captaincy or maybe a leadership role. Can you kind of go through if, hey, you're the starting center mid or you're the starting striker, what are you wanting to see from them in practices and games that is important in understanding their role on that team?
You have to produce, right? First of all, and again, we're talking about those age groups where the result does matter, right? And so I think my initial response is are we producing? Are you producing? So if you're the center mid, that means are you creating chances for our teams? Are you scoring when those chances happen? Are you tracking back and being that anchor on defense or not anchor, but are you tracking back and being that disruptor on defense when I need you to disrupt a pass to the wing or disrupt a through ball or anything like that, right? So I think production in that starting spot matters. Um, and that goes for any position, right? So I went with your center mid, but it goes with any position. Are you being productive?
I think to add in that, are you outplaying the other people that play your position.
Because you should be, right?
Absolutely.
And so then you get into that side of things where ACE comes into play, right? And
Yeah.
and again, we've done how do we you and I dictate playing time. Please go back and listen to that podcast because you and I differ on that a little bit. Where but both of us ACE matters, and so are you working hard in training? Like if you're a starter for me, not even a leadership role, not even are you a team captain, because I think that takes it to a whole new level, especially when you play for me. And I've talked about how being a captain on my team is drastically different, I think, than a lot of captaincies on other teams.
Very true.
So I'm even taking that captaincy out of it. If you are a starter on my team, you better be the hardest working player in training every single day, day in and day out. And I'm reminding you, hey, Chris is trying to take your spot today. Let's see what happens. Right? Or, hey, you know what? Chris got a lot of minutes last game. You getting ready to give up that spot? And so, as a starter, here's your role. You have to produce, but also you have to set the standard. And you have to maintain the standard every single moment in training. And I think that's what's hard for a starter because we all have bad days. Everybody knows that, right? But when you show up to training and your coach is like, hey, I'm sorry your boyfriend broke up with you. You're supposed to be my starting striker. I need you to get with it. And I think that's what makes it really hard, especially at these ages that we're talking about. But for me, those are that is knowing your role as a starter, right? You have to produce and you have to set the standard.
I agree with you 100%. And the one thing I want to add to that is knowing you're a starter, are you a good teammate?
Oh, yeah, great.
You know, let's say on our example here, you're starting center mid, and there's two center mids on the bench. Are you going into practices, rubbing your finger in their faces?
Right.
Or are you pushing them and encouraging them to be better? Because let's be honest here. If you're not being pushed in practice by those other two center mids, you're not getting better yourself.
Correct.
And vice versa. If you're not pushing them to be better, they're not getting better. If the whole team is working for everybody to improve and develop, to raise their level of play, then that kind of kicks back on you on being a good teammate here.
Yeah, I know, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
And I think that's where you and I agree, where off the field, you've got to be that teammate. You've got to have their back. Because, God forbid, if you get injured, you're going to need those backups to take your position and play just as well as you've been throughout that season.
Yep. Sorry, I'm writing down a note, so you keep going.
Coach, let's move on to our next topic. You've got the starters. We know what we're expecting from them. Here's where we get into more specifics of knowing your role and not just knowing it, accepting it. And that's being a substitute. You're not starting every game. You're on the bench. You're coming in, 15 minutes into the game, 20, 25 minutes into the game. You're getting minutes in the first half, you get minutes in the second half, but you're not a starter. This is just as important as the starters, where we can't emphasize enough your value coming off the bench. We watch pro games all the time where pro players are coming in the 75th minute, the 80th minute, sometimes in the 90th minute to just kill a game. And their role on that field is just as important as the starter that they subbed on for.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna come back to what you just said, and I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit. When you talk about substitutes, right? I think that is such a broad term where, like, I have role players, right? So my number 12 and 13 are gonna see quite a bit of minutes, right? But now my number 15 and 16, they may see very few minutes, and there may be matches where they see no minutes.
That's very possible.
To add to that,
when you're in high school, you play for a school team, that's very likely
Oh yeah, very
that
like
certain players will
yeah.
not see any minutes in certain games.
And so for me, that the first order of business is that's on the head coach, right? To be open and honest and say, hey, look, you're gonna, you know, if we're in a defensive battle, you're gonna play 10 to 15 minutes. If we're trying to light up the scoreboard, then you're gonna play 20 to 25 minutes, right? That is just that communication between coach and player. But as the player, I understand how that's hard to handle. It's easier when you know those situations, so I think that's big. But as you mentioned, the subs. How do you become a good sub or a good role player? Well, the answer is, and I know this is going to just kind of be a rebuttal what I said as the starters, but you have to make sure that you're not a starter for a reason, right? So we understand that the production or the talent is going to drop a little bit, but you want to make it drop as significantly small as possible. Right? I want it to be that I didn't even realize I had taken Chris out of the game, right? I didn't even realize that Chris was no longer my center mid, because we didn't start all of a sudden getting dominated in the middle of the field. So again, that goes back to that production point of it. But as a sub, you have to take those opportunities. And so as a coach, that's what I look for, right? Make sure our production doesn't just plummet. But as the sub, I have to take those opportunities, whether it's 15 minutes a half or 4 minutes a game, to make sure that I'm noticed, to make sure, and noticed in a positive way, right? I don't want to be noticed because I give up a PK or get beat 2 times down the wing, right? But I'm noticed in a positive way as, oh, Charlie really handled his own in those minutes.
I love that you just brought that up because I was about to follow up with that. The one thing that I want to add to the substitution role is the coach is going to notice who's complaining.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not getting my playing time, coach.
Yep.
I'm not playing the position I should be playing in, coach. Okay, well, this is a different team you're playing on, and I need you at this position. And he's going to notice the players that come in and shut their mouths and just go to work.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how valuable that is for the players that understand my job is to come into every practice and work and get better and be a good teammate.
And so I'm just going to piggyback on that because we've talked about this before when we talk about playing time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I look back at you and I say, hey, I need you to go get Chris, and your first question is, what's he playing? Then
that rides all over us as coaches.
It does. It rides all over me as a coach. Or here's the other thing that rides all over me as a coach, and maybe it shouldn't. And I'm well aware that maybe it shouldn't. But constant behind me going, hey, coach, I'm ready. Hey, coach, do you need me? I'm ready. Like, I know you're ready.
Of course.
I know you're ready. Now, are there moments when I take that starter off and I say, hey, grab some water, let me know when you're ready? Because I'm going to put them right back on. But again, you want to talk about knowing your role. Here's your role. I need you to be ready. And when I look at you, I expect you to be ready. I don't need you to tell me you're ready. Right? But I need you, when I look at you and say, hey, go get Chris, I need you to be like, yep, got it. And you go to the line, and I can give Chris a 4 or 8 or 12-minute breather, and you're playing that wing or whatever it is, right? But what I don't need is for, again, this is about knowing your role, is for you to go, jump up and go, wait, what's he playing?
Yeah.
Right?
1,000% coach.
And again, that gives away from what we're talking about tonight, so I don't want to harp on that. But as a sub,
I disagree. I think it shows a person that doesn't understand their role.
Yeah.
It's a person that says, well, I couldn't practice every game. I'm here. I work just as hard. But there's more to it than just working hard, because everybody's working hard. There is an understanding of a talent level
Yeah.
that you've got to recognize on your team.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's important. So let's move on to your.
Well, let's talk about the next level.
Yeah.
You've got your substitutes. What if you're just a bench player? What if you're that player that maybe you might get 5 minutes and maybe some games? And we dealt with this more with high school where some players got 0 minutes in certain games. Yeah. And you've really got to understand that it's not, the coach isn't saying, I don't like you.
Correct.
The coach is saying, hey, you're not at this level just yet.
Yeah.
You're not out playing the substitutes either. Yeah. You're down here where I need you to, number one, think about improving. Yeah. And then number two, come into practice and give me everything you've got because I need you to push everybody above you to be better.
Nailed it, right? I need you to be a problem in trainings, right? I need, when you're the defender in a possession game or you're the defender in a scoring game, right? I need you to be a problem. I need you to be in the way. And through that, you have to understand that you are getting valuable touches, right? There is some value. And here's what I'm learning. Like, if I'm running a striking drill, I may just be talking to my center mid and my forwards, but as that defender who I've like, hey, you're going to play center back today, still valuable touches for you, right? So what are you doing with them? But to me, I'm going to spin this another way. As a coach, and this is a question I'm posing to you, as a coach, who are you more likely to play, whether you're up by 4 goals or down by 4 goals late in the game? The player who is constantly on the sideline, who, mediocre at practice and, or maybe even a little above average at practice when it comes to effort. They put their work in, they put their time in, but during a game, they kind of know they're not going to see a lot of time. So you look over at one point, and they're, checking their cell phone, and you look over at another point, and they're standing at the fence line talking to mom or talking to a friend, right? Which are all things that you and I have seen on multiple occasions, right?
For sure.
Versus the player who, let's even say, is a little above or a little below the player we just talked about. So they're an average player at best. They are number 16 or 17 on your depth chart. Mm-hmm. But every time you look over, they are throwing a water bottle to your goalkeeper because your goalkeeper has just been working her ass off. Or you constantly hear them behind you saying, oh, Chris, turn. Or, oh, Sarah, turn. Or, oh, Sarah, man on. Like, they're engaged because you're hearing the whole time. And maybe it's not even that engaged, but maybe it's just like, hey, let's go, guys. Come on. We're fine. Hey, heads up. Let's go. Come on. We're fine. Everybody, let's just route. Like, in those moments, that is a player who understands their role. Yeah. And in those moments when I'm up by 4 or down by 4, you better believe that's the kid I'm going to put in the game.
Well, they deserve to be rewarded.
Yeah.
Because they're
embracing the role.
Individual that we need.
Yeah, they're embracing that role.
Whether they understand that or not.
Right.
They're being a good teammate. They're focused on the game.
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, did you hear what happened to Becky at school today?
Right. Absolutely.
They're focused on what's going on. They're showing the coach and their teammates, hey, I'm on the bench, but I'm your number one supporter.
Yes.
All day long. And that's what I need behind me when I'm coaching games. And like you said, if I'm down 4-0 or up 4-0, whatever it may be, absolutely I'm looking at this person to say, you know what? You've earned the right to get some extra minutes. Even though we're losing or the game's so out of hand that it doesn't even matter anymore. You're going to get some minutes because you showed me you've earned the right to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've earned the right. And again, this is when I don't want to say it goes out the window, but this is when talent doesn't matter to me anymore, right? You've earned the right by being a good teammate and understanding your role. My role is to make the people in front of me better, right? And so, whether I've done that through the competition I supply at training or the support I supply on the sideline, like that needs to be rewarded. And so I guess as we come to the end of this podcast, I mean the my favorite movie of all time is Rudy, right?
It's the perfect example of what we're talking
Yeah,
about here.
I'm knowing your role. And so if you've never watched Rudy, I don't know where you've been, but also go watch it.
Realistically, go watch it.
Yeah, no.
Watch it with your family. Watch it with your team.
Yeah, watch it with your team. Oh, what a
And
powerful moment.
even though it's not a soccer-based movie, the concept that they're trying to, I guess, interpret,
Yeah, drive home. Yeah.
drive home is it's not about you. It's about what's best for the team
Yeah.
and what we're trying to accomplish going forward. I think the best line in the movie Rudy is when he's thinking about quitting.
Yeah.
And the maintenance guy's like, Rudy, you're 100 and nothing, and you're 5 foot nothing.
Yeah.
And you've been practicing with Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That coach sees something in you in the heart, not in your talent. He's saying it's what's in your heart.
I can't
You go to every single practice and you make those starters earn their right to be a starter.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another moment when Rudy even says that, right? He's just like, if you let up, I'm not doing my job, right?
Right.
So anyway, we could
a lot of great lines.
But we could quote
a lot of great lines.
That gets in a lot of trouble. But anyways, breaking news: the U.S. just lost to Panama in the CONCACAF Nations League. But anyways, Coach, a lot of fun tonight. Knowing your role as a player is hard, and we are not trying to gloss over that, especially if you are in that role player role or even that bench player role. We understand that those spots are hard to play. But if you do them the right way, does it equate to more playing time? Probably not, but I think you need to understand that it's not going unnoticed.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to understand is, and you can see this any way you want, but even in the pro level, you clearly have defined roles.
Yeah.
We have players that play 0 minutes throughout the entire season. There are players that may come on and play 2 minutes of a game. But they come on and they play everything they've got for those 2 minutes, because if they don't, they may never get that opportunity ever again.
Well, and so kind of here's where I kind of want to wrap this up. I jotted down this question. It popped in my mind as you were talking earlier. And I am talking to players, to coaches, to mamas and daddies who are, whether you are the starter, whether you are the star player, whether you are the 12th man, or whether you rarely see the field. I mean, I think here's the question we have to ask. Are you pushing the people in front of and behind you to be better? Right? And so if I am the starter, or if I'm the best player, am I pushing the people on that team above me? Like, am I playing a threatening role to them? Right? Are people talking about me? If I'm a sub, am I pushing that guy in front of me to be a little bit better each day, even if it's out of fear of him losing his spot to me? Also, am I turning around and looking at a guy who's struggling in a drill in a rondo and saying, hey, here's how we can do this? Right? Just knowing your role and being a good teammate, no matter what role you're playing, is so important. And I think for players, sometimes they feel like it goes unnoticed. And I think this is two coaches, and especially if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, two drastically different coaches who are telling you that those types of things don't go unnoticed.
Folks, we are the Ace Football Academy. I'm Coach Dunham. This is Coach Hamilton. We thank you for listening to us. Go kick some ace.